Hello everybody. So I'm getting ready to glass bed this HW30 Action into this custom stock. It's an American Classic shape without a cheek piece. Makes it ambidextrous. And we got a good fit of the Action in the wood, but we're going to make it be more perfect by bedding it. There's always little imperfections, like that little gap back there. I mean, you see that even on commercial stocks. It's just the way it is. But it's better if that's a solid fit, because during recoil, the steel won't be moving around in the wood. It'll become as one unit. So I've waxed the Action with Partol number 2. It's a non-silicate wax. Silicates in wax make liquids bead. In this case we want liquids to sheet, so we want to use a non-silicate mold release wax. Partol number 2 paste wax is an industry standard. On top of that I applied a layer of PVA mold release. That's polyvinyl alcohol. It makes a microscopically thin onion skin that washes off with water, or ideally in our case oil. But interestingly, it does not wash off with epoxy. So that's done. We're going to mix laminating resin and fast hardener in a cup, a non-wax cup, so that we don't scrape wax off of the cup into the mix. We're going to thicken it with walnut dust. I made that by running a scrap piece of walnut on the round end of the belt sander and holding this underneath to capture some sanding dust. Mainly that's for color. That adds a little bit of thickening. Then we're going to use Cabasil, which is a thixotropic silica, to further thicken it, and we're going to add some milled glass fibers to make it strong. So review where I'm going to put the glue. I'm going to put it back here behind the Action. I normally would put some on either side of the bolt, but this Action provides very little metal on either side, and most of that glue would just squish out into here and here. I'd have to take it apart and clean it. So we're not going to do that. We're going to apply some glue on either side of the hole. It's not really glue, epoxy. Bedding compound. So we're going to place that on either side here. And then here for this mounting bolt, we've got a little bit of a ledge here that we could focus some epoxy on. So that would be right down in there. And then we're going to apply some on both sides here. It could be anywhere in here, but here we have a little more material, so I'm going to do it here. And then we're going to run a bead all along the edge on both sides of the forearm. Going out to how far? Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to bother trying to do the front. It just doesn't matter, so I'm just going to do it up to the pivot bolts. Alright, here we go. So we're going to turn the scale on with the cup on it, which basically sets the tear. Yeah. Okay. So we got 10.6 grams on there, 10.6. So 4-to-1 mix ratio, so we're going to multiply this times 1.25. 13.25 is what we're looking for. If you need to keep the scale awake, you can just touch the cup. You know, if you got to wait for the hardener to get to the pour spout or whatever. And we're looking for 13.3. All right. So there we go, some hardener in with the resin. Typically it's about 60 seconds mix time. The stuff is pretty cold. You can hit it for a moment with the heat gun to heat it up, make it smoother, more liquidy. On the other hand, by leaving it cold gives you a little more work time. And I'm just going to leave it cold. Alrighty. So now, some walnut dust, some Cavasil, and we'll see how that mixes up. And you're going to fold this in, you know, like pick up a glob of epoxy and just drape it over the top to try to minimize how much of this stuff gets in the air. Sometimes I also will put it down by my hip and walk slowly. The stuff falls out of the air very quickly. Yes, I should probably wear a respirator or whatever, but sometimes I'll just walk around very slowly and it'll fall out behind me. And I also have a variable speed motor controller switch over there on the wall. I can plug the vacuum into that and throttle the vacuum way down and mix next to that, which is a really good idea when doing a large mix for, you know, some projects in my other proclivities. And we're looking for a thick peanut butter mix. And if you ever mix it and it's just too stiff, you could just throw it out and start over, or you could mix another little batch of epoxy in another cup and add a little bit fresh to it. Just move quickly because you're going to run out of working time making that kind of mistake. But let's see, we're pretty stiff here. I'm going to make it a little darker with a little more walnut dust. Yep, I like it. It's nice and stiff. Good color. I'm going to load up one side of the stick. Right, so there's one part of the stick has epoxy on it and not the other side. And that gives me a little bit of control. I got something here that I can deposit onto the top edge of the forearm. Like that. See, I'm just loading up one side of the stick. There we go. Alright, we are looking good. So a little more challenging in the summertime when it's hot. You gotta move quickly because the epoxy will start kicking. Epoxy is a thermosetting resin. It creates its own heat, but the hotter the mix is to start with, the faster it's going to kick. There's a rich there. This top edge of the forearm application of the bedding compound is really more for aesthetics than really doing much for us. But aesthetics are important. It's to the pride of ownership, right? Some people would rather own a dozen cheap, junky guns, and other people would like to own a few quality pieces. Alright, that looks great. It's a little fat on the far side, but I'm going with it. Okay, so now we're going to apply our couple little dollops. I'm going to put a dollop down in here next to this bolt. I need to manipulate this glob onto the very end of the stick so I can deposit it. Yep, there we go. Made a nice little blob there. I'm going to put one on either side of the rear bolt. By the way, I waxed and PVA'd the entire action, including the barrel, just in case I get an errant drip, fingerprint, it'll come off. A little more work to clean it later, but it's okay. Alright, that looks good. Got the two bolts, got it around the back side, across the top of the forearm, and we got the sides here and here. So, I think I want just a little bit more on the back. I can squish it in after the action's in there, but I just want a little more right here. So I know that was kind of a big gap. Alright, I don't think I made any difference there. Here we go. Now I'm going to try not to touch the trigger guard block into any of this goop, and just get this right down in there. Just like that. Boom. Looks great. Fantastic. I'm going to have to squish a little bit more in here and along the edge of the forearm. It really actually wasn't quite rich enough on this near side. That's okay. Let's get a couple screw bolts in here. I guess they're screws. They have screw heads. Well, looks like I will have to clean this bolt hole out afterwards because some glue did squish down into there. No big deal. Pull a little bit of it out. Alright. Of course, I waxed the screws also. And no glue got in this hole. Alright, so that's good. Now I don't like to really crank down on it. We're creating a hard spot that we will be able to crank down on. So I kind of tighten it and loosen it and feel like, where is it like just snug? Not like majorly cranked down. Yeah, that's great. Alright, let's just use a plastic squeegee here and squish this epoxy down here at the back. Squish. Right here where it was a little dry. Squish. Just pushing it right down in there. Yep, looks good. Sorry I'm in the way of the camera. Oh, get a handful of this over on the other side. And we're just going to go on here and just, we need to add a little bit. I see there's a little area that needs some extra glue, so I'm just going to apply it to the plastic squeegee and squish it in there. Yep. Looks good. Fantastic. Now this front screw is just like a placeholder. It's not, obviously it's not doing anything for holding the action into the wood. And I could have put a clamp on it here to give me that squish, but actually the inletting was so perfect to begin with. I can't move it. It's in there. I'm just checking my tightness here. So the other thing I'm looking at is if the top of the action seems pretty close to parallel to the top of the forearm. And one trick I sometimes do for this is get a piece of material like this. This is spruce modeling supply kind of wood, and lay that down on top of the forearm like that, and it gives me a visual, you know, gets this a little closer to the top of the action than the top of the forearm is, like it's a forearm extender, top extender. So I can look down on it and visually see what's going on. And in fact, I see that I kind of have the back end down a little too far there. I think my last tightening was a little too much. I'm just going to back it off a little bit. Yeah, see, I kind of tightened it a little much. And then you can push up on it a little bit. And let me see how I like that. Yep, I like it. So I'll come back to you after it's cured, and we'll pop it out of there. And then a little bit of cleanup, and we'll be cutting the length of pull. So I'll see you all back here in a bit. Okay, well, here I am about to take the action out of this glass bedded stock. It probably was about 4 or 5 hours of curing. I save the epoxy cup and keep it with wherever the gun is. I put it in the sun for a while in the living room, so I put the cup with it. That way I get a good test on if we're crispy cured or gooey. We certainly want to be crispy cured. And you see the next one that I'm working on here, it actually got put on hold for a while, but did quite a bit of work on it today. So let's take this apart. This one was easy. It didn't get any glue on the threads. Let's see how this one is. It did get some glue. Oh, not a problem. That's going to unscrew all the way. Probably created some epoxy threads there in the hole, the wood hole. There we go. Nice and clean, no problems there. Now how are we going to get this action out of the wood? It is glued in there. I'm kidding. So I'm just going to lightly tap around on it, give it some vibration. Sometimes put the bolt back in the action and pound on the bolt can help. It's moving. It looks great. Great, 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 great. And there it is. Yeah, maybe I'll give it a little tap. Oh, I didn't need to. It's popping right out. It's coming out. Oh, it's coming right out. There it goes. There we go. Got a little excess glue there around the trigger block, so that made it a little hard to come out, but wax and PVA meant no problem. Here you can see our glue spot there. Came out perfect. And here I was going to try to avoid getting it in the hole, but it mushed around everywhere, not a problem. And you see I got some cleanup to do. What I'm going to do is hit it with a heat gun, and it'll soften this up like really soft, because it's actually still pretty fresh. Even though it's crispy and when it's cold, once you heat it up it gets really soft and just cuts really easy. So I'll trim all that up, sand the top of the forearm down. Let's see how the action came out. Yep, a little bit of glue. I'll have to open up the action again and clean it out. But it's all waxed and oiled. There's be no problem, but there's a little spot of glue there. And I see we pushed a little bit of glue down to the bottom of that bolt hole, so we'll get that cleaned up. No big deal. It looks great. So, after I do this cleanup, trim up, get the action back in there again, then we'll measure and cut the length of pull, and I'll check back in with you. Bye.